The Santa Monica Pier buzzed with its usual afternoon energy as families strolled the boardwalk, children's laughter mixing with the distant sound of carnival rides and ocean waves. 24-year-old Emma Rodriguez maneuvered her wheelchair along the wooden planks with practiced ease, her blonde hair catching the California sun as she made her way toward the Ferris wheel. Emma had been looking forward to this outing for weeks. As a physical therapy student at UCLA, she rarely had free afternoons, but today she had decided to treat herself to some solo time at one of her favorite places. The accident that had changed her life 3 years ago had taken her legs, but it hadn't diminished her love for the simple pleasures of a beautiful day by the ocean. She wore a white tank top and black leggings, her athletic build a testament to the hours she spent in rehabilitation and adaptive sports. Despite the challenges of navigating crowds in her wheelchair, Emma maintained an optimistic outlook that drew people to her naturally. As she approached a group of carnival games, 3 young men in their early 20s blocked her path. They appeared to be tourists, their loud voices and aggressive posturing suggesting they'd been drinking despite the early hour. "Excuse me," Emma said politely, trying to wheel around them. "Could I just squeeze by?" The largest of the 3, a heavy-set man in a floral shirt, looked down at Emma with obvious disdain. "Look what we have here, guys. Another charity case taking up space." Emma felt her heart sink but kept her voice steady. "I'm just trying to get to the games. I'll be out of your way in a second." "You'll be out of our way when we say so," the man sneered, deliberately stepping closer to block her path completely. "This pier's for normal people, not cripples taking pity rides." Emma's cheeks flushed with anger and hurt, but she tried to de-escalate the situation. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm just here to enjoy the pier like everyone else." The man's friends laughed cruelly. "Enjoy it? What are you going to do? Roll yourself onto the rides? Pretty sure they don't make Ferris wheel cars for wheelchairs." What happened next shocked everyone within earshot. The man in the floral shirt suddenly kicked Emma's wheelchair, causing it to jolt backward and nearly tip over. Emma gripped the armrest tightly, her face going pale with fear. "Move, cripple," he shouted loud enough for dozens of people to hear. "Find somewhere else to roll around." The pier seemed to go quiet around them as other visitors stopped to stare at the appalling scene. Some people pulled out phones to record while others looked around uncertainly, unsure whether to intervene. Emma sat stunned in her wheelchair, tears of anger and humiliation beginning to form in her eyes. In 3 years of living with her disability, she had never experienced such blatant cruelty in such a public setting. That's when the sound began. At first, it was just a low rumble in the distance, barely audible over the usual pier noise. But within moments it grew into the unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines approaching from the parking area. The first bike to appear was a massive Harley-Davidson, ridden by a bearded man in his 40s wearing a leather vest with patches that identified him as part of a motorcycle club. Behind him came another bike, then another, until a steady stream of motorcycles was pulling up to the pier entrance. Within minutes, more than 20 bikers had arrived, their engines creating a thunderous symphony that drew the attention of everyone on the boardwalk. They dismounted with deliberate precision, their leather vests, tattoos, and imposing presence creating an intimidating wall of solidarity. The lead biker, a man who went by the road name Bear, had witnessed the assault on Emma from the parking lot. What the 3 tourists didn't know was that Bear's own daughter had been born with spina bifida, and he had spent years watching her navigate a world that wasn't always kind to people with disabilities. Bear approached the group slowly, his heavy boots echoing on the wooden planks. Behind him, his fellow riders formed a loose circle around Emma and her tormentors, their presence silent but unmistakably protective. "Gentlemen," Bear said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who commanded respect. "I think you owe this young lady an apology." The man in the floral shirt, who had been so aggressive moments before, now looked significantly less confident surrounded by 24 bikers. "Hey man, this isn't your business. When someone kicks a wheelchair and calls a person names on my pier, it becomes my business," Bear replied, stepping closer. "See, I've got a daughter with disabilities, and she's taught me something important about courage." Another biker, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and arms covered in tattoos, moved to stand beside Emma's wheelchair. "Sweetheart, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" Emma looked up at the woman with gratitude, still shaken by the encounter. "I'm okay physically, just shocked that someone would do that." The woman, known as Steel Rose among the bikers, placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Honey, some people are just small inside. But you're not alone here." Bear turned his attention back to the three tourists who were now looking around nervously at the circle of bikers. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to this young lady for your behavior. Then you're going to leave this pier and not come back today. And if we don't?" the ringleader asked with false bravado. Bear smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. "Then we'll have a longer conversation about respect, and I don't think you'll enjoy it as much as we will." The man looked around at the crowd that had gathered, many of whom were now openly glaring at him with disgust. Pier security was approaching, having been alerted by the disturbance, and several people were still recording with their phones. Faced with this overwhelming opposition, the man's courage finally cracked. "Look, lady, I'm sorry, okay? We were just joking around." Emma looked up at him with dignity and tact despite what she'd endured. Kicking someone's wheelchair isn't a joke. Neither is calling people names because of their disabilities. "You're right," the man mumbled, his previous arrogance completely deflated. That was really wrong." Bear nodded curtly. "Good. Now, gentlemen, I believe you have somewhere else to be." The three men hurried away, their exit accelerated by the disapproving stares of dozens of pier visitors who had witnessed their shameful behavior. As the crowd began to disperse, the bikers remained, forming a protective circle around Emma. Steel Rose knelt beside her wheelchair. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" she asked gently. "Emma Rodriguez," Emma replied, her voice stronger now. "Thank you all so much. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." Bear approached, his intimidating exterior softened by genuine warmth. "Emma, my name is Mike, though most people call me Bear. That behavior was unacceptable, and you handled it with more grace than those idiots deserved." "Are you really part of a motorcycle club?" Emma asked, curious about the patches on their vests. "We are," Steel Rose confirmed. "The Guardian Angels MC. We do charity rides for children's hospitals, veterans organizations, and disability advocacy groups. Taking care of people who need support is what we're about." Emma's eyes widened with interest. "That's amazing. I'm actually studying to be a physical therapist. I work with people recovering from injuries like mine." Bear's expression softened further. "Emma, that's exactly the kind of work the world needs more of. People who understand what it's like and want to help others through it." One of the younger bikers, a man with intricate tattoos covering his arms, stepped forward. "Ma'am, would you like us to escort you around the pier today? Make sure you can enjoy your visit without any more trouble?" Emma looked around at these unexpected guardians, tough-looking men and women who had dropped everything to defend a stranger from cruelty. "That's incredibly kind, but I don't want to interrupt your day." "Sweetheart," Steel Rose said with a smile, "protecting good people from bullies isn't an interruption. It's exactly what we signed up for." For the next 2 hours, Emma found herself with the most unique entourage the Santa Monica Pier had ever seen. The bikers took turns pushing her wheelchair when the crowds got thick, cheered her on at the carnival games, and treated her like honored family. When she finally won a large stuffed animal at the ring toss, the celebration from her biker escorts was so enthusiastic that other visitors stopped to applaud. As the afternoon wound down, Bear approached Emma one final time. "Emma, I want you to have something." He handed her a patch from his vest, one that read Guardian Angel. "I can't take this," Emma protested. "This must mean something special to your group." "It does," Bear confirmed. "It means you're under our protection. And more than that, it means you're someone who embodies what we stand for: courage, dignity, and strength in the face of adversity." Emma held the patch carefully, tears of gratitude replacing the earlier tears of humiliation. "You've all given me something I can never repay. You showed me that there are still good people in the world who stand up for what's right." Steel Rose hugged Emma gently. "Honey, you didn't need us to be strong. You were handling that situation with class and dignity before we ever showed up. We just made sure you didn't have to handle it alone." As the bikers prepared to leave, engines roaring to life once again, Emma realized that her worst day at the pier had somehow transformed into one of her best. She had encountered cruelty, but she had also discovered that kindness and protection could appear from the most unexpected sources. The last thing Bear said to her as he mounted his motorcycle stayed with Emma, long after the sound of engines had faded into the distance. "Emma, Never let anyone make you feel less than whole. You're not defined by what you can't do, but by how you choose to live despite the challenges. As Emma wheeled herself toward the parking area, the guardian angel patch safely tucked in her purse, she reflected on how a group of strangers had restored her faith in humanity when she needed it most. Sometimes angels don't have wings, she thought. Sometimes they have motorcycles and leather vests, and they show up exactly when you need them to remind you that you're never truly alone in this world.